please tell us that what are the provisions of law for recovering the electricity loss from the non-paying consumers?
Okay, so next question श्रद्धा का ये है. पहले तो उसने सिंपल क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया कि भाई डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन लाइसेंस ही अदर बिजनेसेस कर सकता है कि नहीं कर सकता है. नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन वो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट हिट बिल्कुल मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन पे कर रही है कि हाउ टू रिकवर मनी फ्रॉम नॉन पेइंग कंज्यूमर्स ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन and what are the provisions under law for recovering money from non-paying consumer. So first is billing. Section 45 of the Electricity Act, billing is most important. So under section 45 you have to do billing, and second जो दो तीन important चीज है to generate revenue is that every year distribution companies can file a application which is called annual revenue requirement to the State Electricity Regulatory Commission. In that annual revenue requirement, it can forecast for the next year or coming years that this is my revenue requirement, and according to that revenue requirement, this should be the tariff for the consumers, which lot of distribution companies are not filing annual revenue requirement for various reasons. And it is mandatory in the Electricity Act that State Electricity Regulatory Commission has to decide that requirement of annual revenue requirement within 120 days. It is compulsory. So whenever DISCOMS see that financial year is approaching, 6 months before, so for example, for next financial year, if you want to change the tariff, before October 1st, you should file annual revenue requirement with the State Electricity Regulatory Commission and get it revised actually. Professionals and lawyers can also assist the distribution companies in drafting annual revenue requirement and filing it before the State Electricity Regulatory Commission, and then getting the tariff orders accordingly. Number one. So section 64(3) subsection 3 provides for the same. Similarly, one more enabling provision is there. Subsidy, if any state government announces subsidy in electricity tariffs, consumer ka, broadly there are four kinds of consumers. There are other small kinds of consumers also, but broadly there are four kinds of consumer for distribution company. One is agricultural consumers, second is domestic consumer, third is commercial consumer, and fourth is industrial consumer. Four kinds of consumer. In case the government decides that any kind of subsidy has to be given to any of the consumers, agriculture consumer or domestic consumer, generally subsidies are given, but they can decide to give subsidy to commercial or industrial consumers also. In that case, advance payment of subsidy is mandatory. Under section 65, it is not like that distribution company will immediately give subsidy and then state government will pay the subsidy amount at its own time, at its own sweet will. It is mandatory under section 65 to give advance payment of subsidy. All right. Third is, in 2021, the Ministry of Power has issued a notification to all the central government organizations to switch to prepaid meters. So all establishment, whether it is defense establishment, whether it is any kind of offices in any state, if central government has, they will shift to prepaid meters, so they will pay in advance actually. So this is to protect the revenues of the distribution companies actually. So these are the steps, legal steps which have been taken to protect the revenues of distribution companies. Secondly, let us come to non-paying consumers. So under section 56 of the Electricity Act, for non-paying consumers, there is immediate disconnection. So once that disconnection it is the biggest deterrent actually. So disconnection happens, so at least stop loss happens. So further loss will not happen to the distribution company, and obviously the consumer who is not paying will pay up. Second is, if you see, next is penalty imposed for theft of electricity. In case of any penalty which is imposed for theft of electricity, that penalty goes to the consolidated fund of the state government. And this is a very big issue. So the question of DISCOMS is that, there is theft of my electricity, and the court has identified that this person is involved in is guilty of theft of electricity, but whatever penalty is being imposed, that penalty is going to the state government. So I am losing out my consumer, I am losing out the penalty, I am losing out my electricity, all the three things I am losing out. So what Electricity Act, there was amendment made in the Electricity Act, and it was also clearly clarified that the special court which is determining theft of electricity will also determine civil liability of that consumer. So besides giving penalty or holding that person guilty of theft of electricity, the special court also determines civil liability of that consumer. And once that civil liability is determined, it is like decree of the court. And that decree of the court can be executed or enforced by the distribution company, because that money will come to distribution company. That civil liability amount will come to the distribution company to protect its interest. But execution proceedings have to be filed under, Order 21 of the Civil Procedure Code. All right. Next is compounding of offense. So in case there is theft of electricity, there is a provision of compounding of offenses also, and there is fees for compounding of offenses. As of now, when there is compounding of offenses, the fees goes to the consolidated fund of the state. Now we are pressing to the government कि भाई इंडियन पीनल कोड में अगर थेफ्ट में कोई किसी को सजा मिलती है और there is compounding of offenses, that amount goes to the aggrieved party. Similarly, in case of dishonor of check, if your check gets dishonor and under Negotiable Instrument Act, there is compounding of that offense. In that case, also the amount goes to the aggrieved party, victim. But in case of Electricity Act, if there is compounding of offense, the amount goes to the consolidated fund of the state. So it is incorrect. Now there is a requirement that this should be shifted, that once compounding takes place, this should go to the DISCOM actually, because its revenues have got impacted. All right. So Shraddha ka question tha ki what about what can DISCOMs do about non-paying consumers? तो मैंने बता दिया कि billing एक तो कर लीजिए under section 645. Second, I told कि भाई they should file annual revenue requirements on time. Actually, now Ministry of Power has also issued notification to all the state electricity regulatory commission, directing them to finalize the orders, tariff orders immediately. Third is advance payment of subsidy by state government. Fourth is central government will do prepayment of all the electricity. Fifth, I said that civil liability will be determined by special court, so you can enforce civil liability in case of theft of electricity. Then in case of compounding of offense, now the application has been moved where compounding fees should also be, with the DISCOMs. As of now, it does not go to DISCOM. It goes to the consolidated fund of the state. All right. The question is that you can also ask the question कि sir billing तो कर दी, after billing हमने disconnection भी कर दी, लेकिन billing के amount है जो वो consumer ने नहीं pay करा, अब क्या करें? In that case, if consumer does not pay after bill has also been raised and disconnection has also happened, but that remain whatever, if there is an industrial consumer और उसका 2-3 लाख का consumption था एक महीने में और वो 2-3 लाख आपके, there is a loss of 2-3 lakhs to the distribution company. So in that case, there are, 3 options available. One option is you file suit for recovery under Civil Procedure Code against the consumer. Okay. Second option is, and that option is available only in case the consumer is a company, and that is you file IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court proceedings as an operational creditor. So electricity distribution companies are operational creditor under Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court. So under section 9 of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Court 2016, if the due is 1 lakh plus, अभी recently normal course में 1 lakh plus dues में हो सकता है, लेकिन अभी recently Government of India ने because of COVID amendment करा था जहां पे 1 CR कर दिया था. That will also be reduced in due course. So industrial consumers के लिए, companies के लिए, LLP के लिए, this facility is available. Second. Third option is very, very strong option, and that option is available to limited states. And that is recovery of dues as arrears of land revenue. So third option available by DISCOMS is कि भाई वो रिकवरी कर सकते हैं ड्यूज की एज अ एरियर ऑफ लैंड रेवेन्यू विच इज अवेलेबल ओनली इन 18 स्टेट्स, नॉट इन ऑल द स्टेट्स. जिन जिन स्टेट्स ने अपने लैंड रिकवरी एक्ट्स बनाए हैं, सो ड्यूज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी ड्यूज रिकवरीज एक्ट बनाए हैं, उन स्टेट्स में रिकवरी कैन बी एज एरियर्स ऑफ लैंड रेवेन्यू. In other states, you have to follow, you have only two options. So in other states, you have two options of suit of recovery and IBC proceeding. In 18 states, you have third option also of recovery of areas and use of land revenue.